the media, when he's giving commentaries and when you're running your farm, we wonder, how did you get into law?
Of course, there's a balance because people have a right to fair hearing. They have a right to appeal. But on the other hand, our court cases take so long that even when it is clear that you've been involved in malfeasance or malpractice, you can remain in office year after year. I view artificial intelligence in the same way. It's a tool. And when you have a tool like this one, you can't restrict non-lawyers from using the tool. Anyone can go to Kenya Law Reports. But the one who's well-trained in the law is the one who will benefit the most because they'll understand the meaning of each case they see. They'll be able to do effective research.
Welcome to the first episode of the CK Legal Podcast, where we talk about law, leadership, and life, one conversation at a time. I am Advocate Dorah Msengeti, founder of Msengeti Advocates and a civic education platform called Let's Talk Law Kenya. And today I am joined by none other, the great, the man who needs no introduction, Senior Counsel Charles Kanjama. Welcome.
Thank you, Dorah, for that very warm welcome. It's amazing, and I'm delighted to be here.
Thank you. The first time I met you, I remember last year during the LSK annual dinner. Within 5 minutes of our conversation, you had mentioned your desire to have a podcast. And you had said that you had wanted to do it for quite some time. And for the last year, we have tried twice. But I guess the third time's the charm. And God has a reason why now it's working out, I'm sure. So with that said, I remember that you were very passionate about the podcast being more than just about optics. You wanted it to focus on integrity, on excellence, and on mentorship. And even before we get there, there's something that me and I know many others have usually wondered about when we see Senior Counsel Charles Kanjama in the media, when he's giving commentaries and when you're running your farm, we wonder, how did you get into law?
It's interesting. When I was in high school, I schooled in a school called Strathmore School. I tended to be quite comfortable with the sciences, mathematics, physics, chemistry. And so my first natural inclination was to become an engineer or one of those courses that involved figures, numbers, calculations. And at some point in time, I met a relative who told me, Kanjama, if you want to do engineering at this time, this was in the 90s, please don't do it in Kenya. We don't have jobs. Right now, the economy was not doing very well at the time. And so I started reflecting on what my future career would be. I went through the courses that I thought involved mathematics, like accounting. I said accounting is just adding and subtracting. Is that challenging enough?
Oh, no.
This was the thinking I had at the time. And it was while I was going through that crisis of thinking what would be my career, because I was thinking of pursuing my career here in Kenya, and I was learning about the state of the economy. One friend of mine who was a tutor told me, have you ever thought of going into the humanities? You speak well, you would make someone good in the humanities. And so I opened my eyes. I started thinking, what would I do in the humanities? And somehow the idea of law came to me at that stage. So instead of choosing any of the sciences, I had not wanted to do medicine because of childhood experiences when I used to go to hospital. So I ended up choosing law, and that's how I became a lawyer, and I've not looked back.
I'm sure the profession is grateful that you made that choice.
Yes.
Speaking of, now in your journey, as you went forward and started the law and started practicing, at what point did you decide, or did it hit you, that you would like to take up leadership, not just in serving the clients, but also the profession and probably the next generation of lawyers as well?
Let me tell you, the first day I walked into campus, I went to study law in University of Nairobi. I remember when I arrived in the university, I found the notice boards were torn. They were not in good shape. The corridors were dark. The lights were not doing very well. And I remember my first reaction was, oh gosh, is this where I'm going to study law for 4 years? And so from those beginnings, I felt that every place I go into, I have to try and leave it better than I found it. And from the very beginning, in first year, I started engaging the administration, the lecturers. In class, I'd ask questions. The administration asked them, why can't you improve the facilities, the corridors? The tiles were missing on the floor in some of the corridors. So I think I had just this desire that any place I go to, I need to leave it better than I found it. And sooner than later, I realized that to achieve transformation, many things you can't go it alone. You need to work with other people. Yes. So in the process of trying to improve the various places I found myself in, I naturally had to work with other people. So it was kind of like spontaneous. Even when I joined the legal profession, I was concerned about certain issues, how long cases would take, the fact that would focus so much on technicalities, applications were the order of the day for striking out, for summary judgment, would not get into hearings. And sooner than later, I met one of my former classmates who told me, I've joined a committee of the Law Society of Kenya, and I found it to be very interesting. I was just in practice for maybe 2.5 years or so. So I decided to join an LSK committee. It was a law reform and legal legislation committee, law reform and legislation committee, and I served there for a number of years. And because of being dedicated to the job and always attending meetings, when the chair of that committee, who's now Honorable Tiende Amolo, was retiring from the committee, recommended me to become the chair.
Oh, wow.
So I then found myself as the chair of an LSK committee. So from those, you could say, humble beginnings, I found myself projected into other leadership roles within the profession.
And now you're the chair of uncountable institutions.
Yes,
and
indeed.
now you've clocked over 20 years in practice.
Indeed,
You've
yes.
built Muma and Kanjama to be, an authority in constitutional, commercial, and tech law.
Yes.
And I wonder, as you were building, because that's not an easy feat,
Yes.
is there a moment when you faced a very serious obstacle? And how did your principles, how did integrity and excellence shape how you responded to such obstacle?
Definitely, every Kenyan who gets into business and professional practice is also a business will face the challenge of the obstacle of corruption and facilitation and so on. When I started the law firm I did with my partner, Andrew Muma, we were both classmates in campus, and we worked together in the first law firm where we did our pupillage and were admitted to the bar. So when we started our law firm, we understood the practice of law. And it was only by getting there and doing it that we started learning the business of law. In fact, it was a few years after we had started the law firm, I started as a managing partner, that I went for a workshop. I think it was in Zanzibar, and the managing partner at the time of Anjarwala, Karim Anjarwala, gave a very insightful session about the business of law. And I think also Philip Coulson, who at the time was a senior partner or managing partner of Coulson Honey, which was later became Bowman's, also gave a session. And I was very struck by their perspective that law is both a practice and a business. But when you get into the business of law, like any other business, you start facing challenges of how to get work, how to retain work, to do the work well, how to deal with the ups and downs. And the challenge of corruption, of course, comes very early on. So I had to sit down with my partner and say, how do we want to run our business? Do we want to be people who give kickbacks to get work? Is it possible to do clean work? And it's not just to get work, it's when dealing with the registries, when dealing with the courts. And I think from very early on, after we discussed, we said, no, can we try and run a clean business? We asked around and we found that, yes, there are some lawyers and law firms who have that principle of integrity. Even if they may be, at that time, I'm not talking about now, at that time they may have been a minority, we said, can we be part of them? So of course you face challenges of one kind or the other. Maybe you bid for work and you realize that the person is expecting that to get some facilitation and there's no facilitation. Maybe you are trying to do a transaction, you realize it's moving slower than it should unless there's some facilitation. And when you say, no, I don't want to give facilitation, I want to do the job, do follow-up, then you face that challenge. It's a challenge of growth, it's a challenge of successful delivery of the assignment while retaining the approach of integrity. But it does pay, it may take time, and one should never blame any challenges they face in terms of growth on saying, no, it's because I am living integrity that I'm not doing well as a
that
professional.
I am not rich.
Yes. You still have to try and find other ways of giving value to your clients. But definitely it's a challenge. And you do face occasions where either clients or other people approach you with that offer. And if you are straight up and with them, you say no, then you're able to overcome the challenge and move on.
I think that's a principle that also usually seeps out when you mentor young lawyers. I remember the first time I paid a visit to your firm, I was inspired because I found, is it 75% of the advocates you work with are young lawyers who have not clocked 5 years in practice. I met my friends, I've just clocked 3 years the other month. So
Yes.
I was like, wow, you would not expect someone so senior and someone so established to be so welcoming and to be willing to uplift so many young people at once. So you spend almost every day, the whole day, dealing with young people.
Yeah, in fact, I think it's the changing face of the profession. Any lawyer who's running a law firm and has a vision of growth, because there are some lawyers who are comfortable having firms with just a few of them and able to do most of the work. But when you have a vision of growth and you want to build a big practice, you find that most of the people you will naturally work with, lawyers, will be young lawyers because they are a bigger percentage of the profession. And of course, you have to find different ways with dealing with people who have different temperaments, who come from Gen Z and the other generations, and be patient with people as well as challenging and demanding to help them to grow and achieve their potential. So I find it is something actually quite exciting about this aspect of the profession, that you are continuously dealing with people and learning them learning you. And I find it to be one of the things that gives me most energy every day, having to deal with people. And this, of course, includes young lawyers. In fact, in my office, I think the young lawyers are probably 80 to 90%.
I lowballed the figure.
Yes.
Are there other areas where you deal with young lawyers? Remember the thing you were just saying about business in law and stuff?
Yes.
These are things you should be speaking to people and telling us before we come and open our kiosks, and then life just slaps us here and there.
I've always been interested in mentorship. Not just of young lawyers, but of students, university students, law students and other students. I've been involved in mentorship for like 20 years. From when I myself left campus, I used to travel to Moi University for over 10 years, and I would meet students there, law students, other students, would have mentorship sessions. I have done mentorship with students from Parkland's campus, and there's a law club called Satima Law Club where you get law students from a number of campuses, MKU, that's Mount Kenya University, Kenyatta University, University of Nairobi, of course, a few other universities, and we have occasional, every month we invite a guest, and the guest is a lawyer who can tell them about their own experiences in the profession. And interestingly, this year I also started a similar platform at Kenya School of Law with some friends of mine there who invite their own friends, and we meet once a month, and again we invite guests to talk about this. So these are just some examples. I also remember that I have had sessions of this kind in the Mount Kenya region, Embu, Chuka, and Meru universities.
Wow.
So I think mentorship is something that is rewarding as of itself. Of course, you have to volunteer, but I always say that even us, when we were young, we looked up to other professionals, and they mentored us. What can we give back to the next generation?
That's very encouraging. I hope to attend one of your sessions, though I have benefited from some mentorship.
Yes.
I will be coming for more lessons. Before we go to the next point, if you're watching us on YouTube, be sure to subscribe. You can follow us on TikTok, on Instagram, on X. We'll be sharing short clips from this episode and also additional tidbits here and there, so be sure to follow and not miss. as we move on to some more serious things, our constitution is a teenager. It just turned 15 the other day.
Yes.
And we had a Katiba Day commemoration courtesy of Kenya Christian Professionals Forum, which you also chair.
Yes.
And it was a very insightful session. I remember being on the panel with some very senior people. And a lot of discussions were had, but mostly it was about especially the freedoms and rights that are being infringed upon lately. The other day, there were about 8 laws signed while the country was going through a very heavy period
Of mourning.
of mourning.
Yes.
And these laws touched on, cybercrime, tech, land
Yes.
rights, and,
Yes.
and freedom of expression, assembly. According to your own opinion, as per the last 15 years,
Yes.
what are the areas where we have really gone left and missed the point?
Yes.
And what are the areas where we have actually done our best and adhered to the spirit of the Constitution?
Yeah, so now that you've mentioned Katiba at 15, at the same time, another organization I'm involved in called Lex of Trust was launching a rule of law report for Kenya. And it was the first rule of law report that has been done specifically for Kenya. And part of the material that was used comes from the East African Rule of Law report that was launched last year for all the East African countries, the World Justice Project on law, rule of law, which has an index for every country or most countries in the world, and also data from Kenya. And the outcome of this report was that Kenya is maybe at around 53% in terms of rule of law, and they identified a number of indicators. Of course, on issues of constitution and constitutionalism, we have had successes and failures. It's been a mixed bag. We have the longest chapter of our constitution is on the Bill of Rights, chapter 4. And definitely from 2010 to where we are, there has been a lot of activity to implement chapter 4, things like access to information, public participation, which is under national values and principles of governance, article 10 of the constitution. There's been a lot of development, court cases, the legislature having to involve the public much more. Even the finance bill protests of 2024,
Yes.
2024, and the finance bill challenge of the 2023 finance bill, all of them was because there's been increasing public participation and the public able to ask questions in advance, and when they find things they don't like, they can take measures against them. So public participation has been good. People have gone to court. They have insisted with the police that take people you've arrested to court within 24 hours. The DPP has refused to take certain political prosecutions to the court or has quashed them. So there has been good progress, especially in chapter 4. Unfortunately, even in chapter 4 of the constitution, we've seen abductions, we've seen disappearances, extrajudicial killings.
Yes.
So these things are coming back. It's like the forces of darkness keep fighting against the forces of light. Another area of significant progress has been devolution. In fact, we were mourning the former Prime Minister Raila Odinga as a political father of devolution, because we've seen his fight for devolution from the 1990s with the Bomas draft of 2003, with the process of the Committee of Experts. He kept pushing for devolution. And of course, devolution is partly because of the work that he and other luminaries in ODM especially did to push for this thing. So devolution has been a success compared to what was there before 2010. You travel around the country and you see how the various counties have now taken up healthcare, they are developing the towns and so on. However, we still have corruption in the counties. The promise of devolution has still not been met. So it's almost like in every area of the constitution is a mixed bag. One of the great areas of innovation of our constitution, we got this from the South African constitution, we borrowed it, is the idea of constitutional commissions. There's too much power centered in the office of the president and in the presidency generally. And so we said, can we take some of this power and give constitutional commissions, like the National Land Commission, what used to be done by the president and the commissioner of lands, or the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. In the old days, you had a department in the Attorney General's office running elections. Let's make it robust. The Judicial Service Commission, so that appointments of judges is not a discretionary act of the president, but there is a process, and various other commissions on revenue allocation, on budget, and so on. And these commissions, their main job, taken together, Chapter 15 commissions, is to safeguard the Constitution and constitutionalism, to ensure checks and balances, to ensure everyone in the executive, in the legislature, in the judiciary is complying with the Constitution. So, of course, they've done good work. But when we look back, we see they are under-financed. We find they are under-resourced. We find some areas where they have not been very effective, like the National Land Commission. They still find that most of the land resources are with the Ministry of Lands, and so on and so forth. When you look at the Judicial Service Commission, they keep facing challenge of budget to recruit additional judges and magistrates, and so on. So in all these areas, when we look at the area of the security infrastructure, we said Kenya should not be a one-man show. Cannot just be the president as the one giving the overall direction. Let's put National Police Service Commission, even the Inspector General of Police, who's one person. Let's give them independent command of the police, so that they are not commanding the police on the instructions of the Ministry of Interior. But what is the reality that we've seen? That even the National Police Service Act is being amended, so that certain functions of the National Police Service, like recruitment, some of them are being taken to the Inspector General of Police. The Inspector General of Police still operates almost as if he's an employee of the Principal Secretary and Cabinet Secretary in the Interior. You see? So you have great things that have happened in the Constitution. The police was meant to become a service, not just a police force, but still corruption is prevalent in various areas, including the police force, including the judiciary. All three arms of government, it has been devolved to the counties. So there's a mixed bag, and my own feeling is that it is high time now for the citizen to take charge of supporting the processes of governance and calling to account those who are falling short of the constitutional requirements. And so for me, I'm very passionate about the idea of, can citizens come together and consume the reports that are being generated by the Chapter 15 commissions, by Parliament and so on, judge their leaders based on how they are performing. And if we do this and we call everyone to account, then we'll be able to ensure that this saying that eternal vigilance is the price of liberty, we'll be able to ensure that we keep constant and eternal vigilance, so that our liberty, the ones that we enjoy, do not get taken back by the forces of darkness.
The forces of evil. So 15 years on,
yes,
if there's one thing that you could amend, or one principle that you could strengthen in the Constitution,
yes,
what would it be?
Okay, so in 2010, there were concerns that were expressed by some people, and I remember this included the church leaders. I articulated some of their concerns at the time about aspects of the Constitution, and most of the aspects of the Constitution they had a concern with related to aspects to do with Chapter 4 of the Constitution, on the Bill of Rights, to strengthen the protection of the right to life, to strengthen family values. For me, that is one area that I would be quite keen on, if there was an amendment to the Constitution, strengthening that area. Of course, there's also been a weakness in Chapter 6 of the Constitution, issues of integrity and leadership and ethics is more in words than in deeds. And I think there would be need to strengthen Chapter 6 of the Constitution on the mechanisms in which leaders, both elected and selected leaders, can be held to account and, if necessary, even leave office. The aspects of accountability. Of course, there is a balance, because people have a right to fair hearing. They have a right to appeal. But on the other hand, our court cases take so long that even when it is clear that you've been involved in malfeasance or practice, you can remain in office year after year. So one of the things I'd want to do is to put a time limit for dealing with matters, cases, and processes involving discipline of state officers. The way we have time limits for election petitions, which have been observed, 6 months in the High Court, 6 months in the Court of Appeal, that would be an area that I'd also want to amend.
That's very eye-opening and insightful.
Yeah.
We should explore that. Just as long as you're not amending term limits, I think we should be fine.
Yes.
Speaking of, on a lighter note,
Yes.
if you weren't a lawyer or
Yes.
in the leadership positions that you are today,
Yes.
what do you think you'd be doing instead?
Interestingly, when I finished high school, the first course I did before joining campus was a computer programming course. And the first job I ever got was as a computer programmer. I worked for 1 year as a computer programmer even before joining campus. And some of my friends I was working with, I remember telling me, Kanjama, why are you going to campus to do law? Why don't you just continue working in computers or go and do computer science, which was being offered at the University of Nairobi. So to answer your question, it was not doing law. I think right now I'm very excited about artificial intelligence and everything related to ICT, information and communication technology. I think that would be another field that I'm really excited about and probably I would be focusing on.
You'd be a tech guy.
Yes, and one thing I like about technology is the scalability. You see, in the area of law so far, every client has to come and talk to you. And you have very limited time in every day. You can't expand your hours beyond 24 hours that you need to do several things with. And the one thing I value and really love about technology is how you can scale up so that many people are benefiting from the service or the product, even though you are not dealing with them one-to-one at that particular time. And I have this dream that we can somehow marry more technology in our professions, including the legal profession, and find ways of empowering lawyers so that as the lawyers are offering service, they can multiply their ability to offer the service to more clients, and this will contribute to access to justice.
I think, especially on the point of scalability, and it's quite multifaceted because with the civic education platform, the Let's Talk Law Kenya, that was one of the things I appreciated about technology because I was functioning alone, still do, and yet just one person was able to reach tens of thousands of people with sharing the knowledge. And that, to me, that at first it seemed like a miracle. From my own room, just writing threads about the constitution or some law, and you're having hundreds of thousands of people respond and actually get knowledge and insights. Technology has been a very big lifesaver on that front. And on the matter of AI, you know, there's the sentiments are 50-50 on AI in the profession. When at the annual conference last year, I was giving a keynote in the Young Lawyers Forum about AI and how it can contribute towards excellence and efficiency in the legal field. And of course, the one thing that was very, very clear is that, yes, AI can do so many things, but it is not human. So there are nuances there where it can't empathize and make decisions based on more information. It's either black or white. And sometimes that can create bias, hallucinations, and things like that. But the key thing that I took away from the conference was when the East Africa Law Society Vice President came to where there was a legal AI booth. They were showcasing how it can help lawyers.
Yes.
And he raised a question. He said, you know, by law, there are things that only an advocate should be able to do or handle, even some documents. So when you have a service like this, because it's almost like ChatGPT, but now for Kenyan law.
Yes.
Yeah, so, but when you have a service like this that everyone can access and come and do documents and whatnot, aren't you going against the law that says some things should only be handled by advocates? How will you balance that? Will you work with LSK to say that people should put in their P1 or 5 numbers in order to access some information? Or what would be the balance? Or is it just they want to protect the profession and make sure lawyers do not lose out on work and money? How will we strike that balance?
When I entered the legal profession, to answer your question, the process of law reporting had collapsed. In the legal sector, for those who may not be lawyers and are listening, one of our tools of trade is what other judges or other courts have decided on similar matters. And so for lawyers, it's very important as our tools of trade that we have the laws of the land, the constitution and the laws on one hand, and previous court decisions on the other hand. So this is what law reporting is all about. So law reporting had collapsed for maybe about 10 years. There were no published annual reports of judicial decisions. So what used to happen in those days, there were some few people, they could have been librarians or just court clerks, who would put together some of the cases they considered important, bind them, and go around law firms hawking them. So you'd have decisions about running down or accident cases, saying this judge gave $1 million shillings for somebody who fractured the arm, this other one gave 1.5 million shillings, and lawyers were buying those things. In fact, one of the first jobs I did once I became a lawyer, at the time of pupillage, was I worked with an organization called Law Africa Publishing Limited. And what they decided to do, the two founders had gone to do law in the UK, and their eyes were opened by what they saw there. They saw that law reporting could be digitized. They would get court decisions, type them, digitize them, and put them in their database. It was a searchable engine. So this was the first online law reports that were accessible in Kenya. And it was very exciting. I was part of the process of reviewing some of these decisions and identifying the more important ones that would then report. So, of course, this was a tool. It was technology. And when it came, of course, there are some people who feared they'd go out of business because they used to print a few cases. But the law reports have now become a very necessary tool for lawyers. When a National Council for Law Reporting was challenged by what Law Africa was doing, and they started publishing online law reports, they did a great job. All lawyers now have to access Kenya law reports on their platform because they have such a fantastic resource. So for me, I view artificial intelligence in the same way. It's a tool. And when you have a tool like this one, you can't restrict non-lawyers from using the tool. Anyone can go to Kenya law reports. Yes. But the one who's well-trained in the law is the one who will benefit the most because they'll understand the meaning of each case they see. They'll be able to do effective research. So you can't stop a non-lawyer from using an AI tool which is telling them about legal knowledge. The lawyer, though, when they use the AI tool, is able to get more from it. And I recently was listening to a video which was explaining that even for AI, they have started giving a kind of like reservations and saying that there are certain areas like medicine and law where we advise you to consult professional advice, because it's easy to get misled. We've seen even lawyers themselves being misled by hallucination from artificial intelligence. Yes. So what about the person who is not a lawyer? You can't stop them using the tool, but eventually they'll still need to seek legal advice from those who are trained and are able to understand better the product of the AI, the output of the AI, and also identify the errors that are there. But it's a challenge for us. If I used to take 1 hour to draft a certain agreement, a certain contract, and somebody can churn in information in AI and get a contract in 10 minutes, and that's not a lawyer, then why should a lawyer be taking an hour anymore? You see, unless it's a complex contract. But if it is a standard contract, then it's a challenge for us to become more efficient. So for me, I think it can only be for good. Of course, there are some areas of dangers, but I think the solution is to really empower lawyers, especially the young lawyers, to learn the AI tools that are there. We need to build better and more effective artificial intelligence tools that can assist lawyers in their work. And the tools that are available are not just tools to churn out legal information. There are tools on personal planning. There are tools on recording minutes. There are tools on analyzing documents, decisions, client management, client relationship modules. There are all kind of fantastic tools that you can use to improve the business of law, even as you improve the practice of law.
Very great. I think maybe you would have won some hearts and minds over. Maybe we should do a poll after this to see who is on your side and who is like, nope, this is going to take my money. I don't want it. Before we wrap up, I have another interesting question for you. When people look back on your contribution to the legal profession, What do you hope they will remember the most? And what are you doing right now to build towards that legacy?
Okay, one of the things that we are doing right now, and it's very difficult for one to talk about themselves because it's others to judge what you've done, but one of the things that we are doing right now that I'm proud of is when I was the chair of LSK Nairobi branch, I was the inaugural chair from 2016 to 2020. We set up the entire branch infrastructure. Nairobi branch includes 2 counties, Kiambu County and Nairobi County, and has about 75% of practicing lawyers in Kenya. So it was a great challenge. We set it up. We were focused on matters of practice and welfare. And then I also brought together the other branches. LSK has 8 branches into a caucus of branch chairs. Participated in the process of the LSK regulations being revised and approved, ensured that you had very good provisions for branches and devolution and making them effective. But when I was in that whole process, I remember realizing that we still have many people who complain about sometimes poor service by some lawyers, because any lawyer can have poor service on one day or another. And I thought, can we try to come up with a system also to inspire ourselves to be better? And it is from those humble origins that we began the Nairobi Legal Awards, which are meant to celebrate and recognize legal excellence. We are now a week away from the 8th edition of the Nairobi Legal Awards. It's an annual award cycle. We have been awarding individual practitioners as well as organizations of lawyers, legal departments, and we have institutionalized the idea that lawyers can pursue legal excellence and be celebrated for it. Not just, you could say, the high-profile lawyers and law firms. We even have a category for young lawyers, 0 to 5. We have category for SME or small and medium-sized law firms. So for me, I find this as a very exciting process. And what I found is a number of people who are volunteering in the process. The assessors who go to assess the various candidates, the jury that then process the data of the assessors. Of course, the secretariat that is working throughout this issue, the technical committee that plans our events. And I even get very inspired by the nominees and the candidates who agree to share their data. They fill a form, they allow themselves to be assessed by their peers. I find this a very inspiring cycle. And every year at the end of it, I say, wow, if only we could communicate more of the great things lawyers are doing out there. And this can balance against some of the sad stories that we hear from time to time and inspire all of us to get better. And I can say that sometimes you get inspired by certain categories, because I've been in the jury of the Nairobi Legal Awards. One of the categories that inspired us tremendously this year is the young lawyers category. The things that our colleagues, young lawyers, are doing are amazing.
Wow.
And we need to tell the story so that we can inspire others to keep innovating and building the legal profession to a truly 21st century profession.
Amazing. Maybe next year I'll nominate myself so that I can also get an award.
Indeed.
I know there's so much we can talk about, but this being the first episode, I think I've done well putting you on the spot, which you try to avoid. And we'll have many more episodes with guests and other topics as well. So with that said, I want to thank you so much for making the CK Legal Podcast a reality, and for making the time, and for giving another young lawyer the opportunity to be here and to learn and to share. I'm looking forward to the next episodes, and I don't know what parting shot you'd like to give anyone who would be watching.
Maybe the parting shot is that excellence is not a destination. It's a journey that is consistent with commitment, and that journey, if it has those right values, is truly what excellence is.
Thank you so much. And with that said, thank you so much for watching. Remember to subscribe, to follow on TikTok, Instagram, and X to keep in touch with what we're doing outside of these episodes. And until next time, keep pursuing integrity, excellence, and innovation in all that you do. See you on the next video.